Are you struggling with drawing bodies? Then here's how I draw them step by step. I used to overcomplicate the bodies, and because of that they would often look wonky, but breaking them into simple shapes changed everything. So let me show you how to do that. And first let's start with proportions. Now let's start with proportions. So what I usually do is I break my character into size of some heads. So let's see how here the pose is around 7 heads. So here we can divide it into two parts, the upper body and the lower body. And I usually do like upper body 3.5, something like here, and then either 3.5 for lower body or like 4. It would be something like that, like 3 and like it would be 4. Obviously it's like a model look, but yeah, you can play with it. You can make like even like 3 heads, okay, whatever, for the whole body. But yeah, now let's go to the proportions. So upper body here, let's say, is 3.5, and the lower is also 3.5. So now let's start from the top to the bottom. Let's start with collarbone. And collarbone is around the length of, let's also divide the head into thirds. So here we have nose, eye line, eyebrow line, chin, and our forehead. So the length of our neck, I usually like to do just basically from the bottom of the nose to the top of the forehead. I'll take that and I put it from the chin to the collarbone. Chest sits at around the length of from the chin to the forehead. So here we have this. And now the boobas sit a little bit below that and start at around midway on the chest muscle. The hips, I'll usually do the 1/3 from the top of our ribcage. Let's quickly divide it. Let's bing, bong, bong. It's around that. Not perfect, but I usually do that. Now, a good rule for waist is to take our head and try to fit it in the waist. A mistake I was doing before is I would make the waist too small. Now it's starting to look a little bit weird. Just make sure that you can fit a head here. Also, make sure that in hips, you can fit a little bit more than a head. Let's also make sure that you can fit a head here. Okay, from sideways also, but this time a head from sideways. And the lower leg, you can like a half of the head. Let's go down to the legs. I usually do 2 heads for the upper and 2 heads for the lower, and a little bit for the feet. Now let's go to the arms, which I usually just do a simple bubble here, a simple like oval here, and it basically goes at around this waist level. Arm would be like that. Let's do something like that. So if arm would be here, would be have this length or like that, boom, boom. And also like the wrist, I like to put at this level here. If the arm would be straight, let's say like that, it would be something like that. And here obviously would be our hand and palm and stuff. Now also for proportions, the hand that you have, you can divide into 2 equal parts. So let's say this is a middle finger, and the middle finger has the same height, same length as the palm. Also the palm you can divide into thirds from top to bottom, and the triangle here starts about 2/3 from the bottom. Also you can divide it in half, and then here you have this muscle here, this like that. All the hand stuff, boom boom, it's not straight, it curves. The belly button sits at around the middle of the torso, but I like to play with it. I like to put sometimes it higher or lower, depends on what you actually want to do. And also with abs, I like to make it the same width as the head. Okay, and here it's front view, and this is a little bit of 3/4 view, like more perspective, so obviously it would not match. But yeah, if in front view, I like to make it basically the same level, the same width. Okay, and I think that's it for proportions. So first I always place a head, and let's make it. Now after that I add a simple neck line that represents the gesture or something, and then add gesture for the whole body. Okay, then let's put some horizontal lines for our shoulders and our hips. It's good to also, if you want to make a more dynamic pose, make them have opposite angles. So now let's place a simple egg for our chest. Okay, and here we can adjust the neck so it actually suits here. Let's add also a hole for our neck. Okay, now I like to add a sternum and some thoracic arch. It shows better which side the chest is facing. And also add this simple line. Now let's actually, okay, let's again fix it a little bit. Let's add a simple neck, so we can use a simple cylinder here. I also like to add a collarbone and a trapezius. Okay, already. So I have a better representation of, the pose and stuff and which direction it's facing. Okay, here we can, the neck is also too long. So a good rule for neck is, let's say this is the middle of the face. It's actually a little bit elongated, so let's fix it like that. Okay, this is the middle. Let's say this is the eyebrow line, there's nose. So, and also there's like forehead. Let's make it in thirds. 1, 2, 3, somewhere. Okay. So now a good rule for neck is to have the same size, the same length from the bottom of the nose to the top of the forehead. So let's take this size and place it here. So now I already see that we need to put it a little bit lower, of course. So now we put the same length that is here, we put it here. So from the chin to collarbone, okay? And now we can have this. Also, I feel like, okay, let's actually put first this. Okay, boom, boom, and neck for hole, boom, boom. Okay. Okay, now let's add a simple, I guess, spheres, circles for the shoulders. Okay. Okay, now what I like to add is a basic hips. So for hips, or I guess for this area here, I just put a triangle, like not even like 2 lines that, you know, represent the hip here. Okay. So what we can do here is we can make a simple shape that, you know, shows our hips here. Actually, we can push it a little bit forward. Okay, make this gesture here, and okay, we can make a simple shape for our hips. And what I usually do, I just skip it, or I just do an oval, and then I just add something like that. It's like, first you don't have to really think about it, just place some, you know, basic shapes like this. Is basically like a rectangle with a triangle at the bottom. Okay, so then I'll usually do a gesture for legs, and you know, legs are all about gestures, to be honest, and we want to use either C, S, or straight lines. And so here let's use a C line. Here we can also use a C line, and here like a good rule for shapes while drawing legs is have one side straight and one curved. Okay, you can also use like, you can make it the same stuff with just lines, so you don't have to make a curve. You can do bing bong. This is like more straight. Obviously here we have hips and stuff, but yeah, this is like more straight, and these are pretty much cylinders. Okay, so you can do something like that. Here's a cylinder like that, boom boom. Then we have whatever. Here also we can place a cylinder, so we make it like that, boom boom. So where the leg is in perspective, we need to pay attention to this angle here, because it won't be straight. Okay, if the leg will be a little bit raised, let's say something like that, and it's like something like that, then it's obviously like that. It won't be here because the leg is raised and it's higher or lower, whatever. Here we want to do something like this, so let's take the upper leg, boom boom, somewhere around here. Now take this, we can put an S here, an S curve like that. It will be straight. Obviously then we can add details, so it won't be straight for the whole time. Okay, but first we want to like establish the basic shapes. Okay, so let's add knee here. This can be like a straight like that, boom boom. Now for the lower leg, what I like to do is basically also a C line, but then I would add some details up top. So obviously here like that. Okay, it's a simple shape, but it maybe a little bit higher like that. Boom. Okay, it's a similar shape to this, but it's like mirrored. Okay, so same here, and then we'll add details later. Okay, something like that. Boom boom. Now we can add a simple shape for the feet. So for feet, I usually do like a simple, I guess, something like that. Triangle here, boom, another line here. Depends on the feet, and feet are longer than hands, but we don't have hands yet. But yeah, here like a straight line, boom boom, a little bit like that, like that, boom boom, a triangle, boom. And this feet faces like this direction. Add something like that. Let's put this facing forward. So here we want to follow the flow. Okay, boom boom, add another line. And also a good rule for lines is, for feet, is that the feet would have this from bottom of the nose to the chin. That would be this big. I don't have to worry about feet. What we can also add is a little bit more details to hips. So sometimes I'll do something like that. It gives me obviously like a more better view of those, of body parts. So now we have our legs. Let's add some simple arms. Here we can use a simple cylinders for hands, and obviously hands sit at about waist level in basically middle of the whole torso. So let's make it something like that. Obviously depends on perspective, because it will be something like that. Boom, boom. So let's make a hand, an arm that rests on the hip. You can also push the hip a little bit here, make this then smaller. Okay, and let's make it boom boom. An upper arm obviously have the same length as the lower arm. Okay, let's make a simple arm like that, and now let's make the other arm. Obviously it will be a little bit behind the body, but what is useful is to actually think of not only the 2D image, but a 3D. So what's behind that, okay? And we can actually make a line here. Let's erase it a little bit because there's a lot of noise. Boom, boom, like that. It would be, let's add a simple shoulder. It goes like here, boom, boom. Then from here, it would go around here. And let's say it's just resting on the leg like that. Okay, obviously we have a wrist here. Now it goes a little bit down like that. Let's say this is palm, a little bit longer actually. There's knuckles and fingers. So now let's also connect the torso, the chest, with our hips. So basically we can do like just a line like that and it will be fine. Now let's also sketch, boom, boom. A simple belly button, so it's basically in the middle of the torso. So here the lines goes like that. Okay, now let's fix this a bit. So now let's also add some abs, and abs can be a simple rectangle, okay? But for female characters, what I like to do is basically also take this, let's say, okay, it's attached here, but you can see like more of here. So let's say it's curved up top, okay? So it goes like that, curved at the bottom. Okay, I like to actually do this shape. Let's say this is from a side view. Okay, obviously this goes here. There's a pubic area here, but yeah, it like an indentation here. Okay, so let's erase that and put it here. And obviously it would be not like, let's say like that. So like that in the middle, it's slightly higher. Okay, so let's place it on the body. So here I just go from the ribs like that, boom boom, that here we have this, and then from this side it would be like that something. Okay, obviously here this, here goes a little bit from the side view. Let's say there's a belly button, it goes like that, and here there's a pubic area. It's like more like something like that, okay, boom. So let's put it here, boom boom, like that, boom boom. It's the bottom of this, okay. And yeah, now we can also add some boobas. So basically pecs sit at around, a level from chin to the eye level. So let's take this length here and place it here, so it would be around here, okay. And boobas actually sit a little bit lower. You can make a line that shows the cross section of rib cage, and from here we can do a simple drop shape. So basically it would be something like that and something like that. But I don't sketch it, I just add some ovals, some spheres here, and obviously remember that the chest is curved. So if something is like that, it will be also curved here, okay. So that would go like here, straight line here, okay. Then obviously it overlaps here. Boom. Something like that. Let's make a simple ones. And now one useful tip is that to just guide a line from the neck, and what it does, it basically shows you the transition between the shoulder and the pecs. And from that you can just make a line here, and you have your, I guess, armpits, your shoulder line, boom boom. Okay, and you can just do this. Obviously these are not perfect balls. These are more like an ovals from a front view, something like that. So let's also add something like that. Also, I like to put this line that basically shows the perspective of it, if this is aligned and stuff. And from here, like a line like that. Also, they sit at around middle point, around middle of the pecs to the collarbone. But here I put it a little bit higher so we can lower it a little bit. Something like that. Now let's go to the refinement. So we'll make a new layer. Okay, let's change the opacity of this one. Oh, and let's actually start refining. So here we actually would like to have some knowledge of muscles. Okay, but let's start with a refinement of our head. Now let's add a neck. Also, you can use a cylinder for neck, but the neck is not a perfect cylinder. It's actually something like that. Okay, so here's the back. Okay, and it's from the side it looks like a cylinder, but it's not. It's something like a triangle, curved a little bit, something like that. And here you have a spine and stuff. Yeah, and also with drawing necks is they're not like this. They're more tapered. Okay, so you can taper them a little bit. So let's do that. Okay, now let's add simple this muscle here that goes around the neck, and it actually attaches here. You can do that. A simple hints. Don't, like with drawing anatomy, obviously it depends on how fit or how defined the muscles are, but I like to actually just add hints of anatomy. Okay, so let's put here the collarbone. Okay, now here the armpit area. Okay, it would be the bicep. Okay, because of this muscle here that rotates the hand, it would be shaped like something like that. Okay, boom boom. You can actually, so let's also make this. Let's now the back of the chest. Okay, here the chest goes like that. You can see here. Now here would be our pelvis, and I actually like to show the hip bone, so it would be somewhere like here. So I just do a bump that represent the hip bone underneath. Okay, so here would be this. Okay, let's do now this side with chest. Just show a little bit. Boom boom. And this would go right here. Okay, just simple also a bump here. Okay, let's erase it. Look at how the slow is doing. Okay, now let's add this belly button here a little bit like that. Okay, can add some more muscles definition like that. Okay, now let's add this area here. Okay, goes a little bit like that. Now this leg. So here would be this muscle. A little bit over here. Boom boom. Now we can also add a hint of sartorius muscle. It would go around the neck, around the leg, and it actually connects somewhere here in the kneecap. So like that something. Okay, now put another muscle here. Boom boom. And what it does, it basically creates this bump here. Obviously it doesn't have to be that defined. Okay, now this side. Okay, a simple knee. Just basically this stage is just refining some shapes. Okay, and like adding some muscles on top. You can still like use some basic shapes still. Okay, add some meat or fat. Okay, boom, boom. Let's give back this. Okay, you can add a simple line here. Okay, now let's go to the other shoulder. For the other arm, let's just add hints like that. Boom, boom. Obviously a wrist here. Okay, so here we have a simple body. So just to summarize everything, I start with a head, a simple head, then I add a basic gesture line, then obviously the lines for shoulders and hips, then a basic masses for hips and chest, okay? Then I add some legs, basic shapes, basic gestures, okay? A little bit of feet, then obviously shoulders and arms, and then I just go and refine everything. So obviously these are like quick drawings, but I think you get the point of, just starting with a basic shapes and gestures and then going and building on top of that. And if you like this video, you can also watch this video, and also you can check out my Patreon for monthly tutorials and join to my waitlist for my first drawing course to get updates on. So thank you for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.